Just very quickly, before I get into what I wanted to truly talk about today, the reason we're doing what we're doing and why we're here, quite frankly, is for what we experienced. There was over 80 kids up here this morning, and I couldn't help but notice there were a few wet eyes. And it gives us such a great feeling to know that, A, we're successful, but B, we're truly making a difference. And in making a difference, your Connect cards that everyone hopefully has at this time, we want to have you fill these out, whether you're first time or that you come every week. It doesn't matter. We're inviting all of you to a celebration on November the 20th. And what it is a dinner after the service. We're going to be combining services with the 9:30 as well as the 11 celebration with a lot of music and truly to lay groundwork and to celebrate where we've been and truly where we're going. And it's just a yes or no answer. Will you be here for dinner afterward or not? It's going to be a great event, great food, and great music and so forth beforehand. So please answer yes or no, and please record your information on the front. First time in the church, or if you've been coming, you're all invited, and we won't do anything but call and ask you if you are coming or not coming if you don't respond to the yes or no. That's all it is an invitation to dinner after church. We truly look forward to seeing you here on the 20th and every Sunday in between now and then. So thank you.
All right. Excellent. And I got to tell you, we're going to have some great food. You are missing something if you miss that. So November 20th, please come out for that. And again, please fill out your Connect card, yes or no. Let us know how many in your family will be coming, because we need to know for the reservation so we know how much food to make. All right? And now we have a couple announcements.
Welcome to iFire, where the next evolution of faith is taking you one step closer. Whether you are a first-time guest or a lifelong member, go ahead and fill out your Connect card. If you are a first-time guest, please mark that on the card. The church gives $5 to the Emmanuel Care Center for every first-time guest who fills out a card. Also, make sure to flip over the card for the latest sign-up opportunities. Helping kids move one step closer to Jesus is central to our identity here at iFire. Childcare is available for kids 6 weeks to 3 years old in our nursery. For preschool through 6th grade, we have commotion downstairs starting 15 minutes before the service. Ask any greeter to show you where to go. Your offerings continue to have a real impact on the people and ministries of this church. Here's just another way in which your offerings are touching lives.
This church just has changed my life in ways that it's brought healing that I don't think I would have ever found anywhere else. And that to me is, the biggest accomplishment.
You can put your offering and Connect card in the metal kiosk by the door on your way out. As we like to say, feed the robot. Pastor Vicky's small group study, Living the Questions, started this past Tuesday. But if you struggle with tough questions on this walk with Jesus, then you really should give it a try this week. This small group was tailor-made for people just like you. For more information, talk to Pastor Vicky. Don't forget to follow iFire Girard on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to stay connected throughout the week, and on YouTube to see all of our videos, including this one.
Okay, well, let me tell you, I learned something as a pastor this week. And that was, I started Living the Questions on a day where it was competing with W3, which stands for Women, Wine, and the Word. And the guys were over at Royal Gardens starting the men's group. So guess where they didn't come, right? Okay. Apparently we like the spirits a little bit more than the spirit. And so I learned my lesson, all right? So we're going to start this Tuesday, all right? Living the Questions. And if you kind of realize that sometimes there just aren't pat answers for everything, but you still have the questions, you still want to be supported as you ask the questions, but you're okay with understanding that sometimes life just gets messy and we got to walk together through it. This is a great group for you. And so please come on out Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock, and we're going to learn how to live the questions and not just search for the answers, okay? We are not serving anything other than water, but it will be available at my office, okay, 7 o'clock. We're going to continue on with our series today on haunted, getting past those things in your past. Today, we're going to talk about being haunted by past relationships where there's still unforgiveness, okay? The scripture that we're reading is from Matthew chapter 5, verse 23. So, if you are presenting a gift at the altar in the temple and you suddenly remember that someone has something against you, leave your gift there at the altar and go and be reconciled to that person. Then come and offer your gift to God. Now, I know that when we're starting this spiritual journey, we think, okay, I got to get this thing with God right, only to find out that Jesus was telling people, wait a minute, actually, it's the other way around. That if you're bringing your offering to God, if you're bringing this gift to the temple and you think that that's going to make you right with God, the problem is you remember that there's somebody that you have something against or somebody that has something against you, then leave what you brought right there. Don't even offer it yet. You go and you be reconciled to that person first, and then you come back. And then you come back and make your offering to God. He's saying your relationship with your brothers and sisters gets dealt with before you really work on your relationship with God. That sounds a little backwards, doesn't it? We're not used to that, are we? Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit today. First of all, let's talk about giving forgiveness. Because those relationships in our past that haunt us, there's probably unforgiveness there. And it's been hard to move past them. They still haunt us to this day because of unforgiveness. Anne Lamott says this. She says, unforgiveness is like drinking rat poison, hoping the other person will die. Hoping the other person will die. We don't understand the power of unforgiveness to actually haunt us and not them. The person who did something to us, the person who hurt us, we think that if we don't forgive them, that somehow they're going to be harmed by it. But yet, what we realize is we're the ones who end up harmed by it, either physically because it drains us or makes us depressed or gives us anxiety, or spiritually because for some reason we just feel so distant from God and we can't figure out why. Well, Jesus gave us an indication of what that might be. Have you met somebody that has an ex that they just can't stand, and you hear constantly the litany of everything that they've done wrong? It's like gunfire, and they can name off everything that person has ever done wrong and probably is still doing wrong to this day. Are they fun to be around? No. Now, you're not the one that hurt them. You're not the one that made the transgression, but yet still there's something in them that just won't let go and begins to harm their other relationships too. And they become a bitter person, because once you start keeping records on one person, it's a whole lot easier to start keeping records on everybody else. You see, when we don't forgive people, it hurts us. It hurts us. You bring your offering to the temple, leave it there and go deal with this first, because you're hurting yourself. You're hurting yourself. Now, when we talk about forgiveness, one of the things I just want to make very clear, this does not justify their actions. This does not say that they weren't a jerk. It doesn't say that you deserve to have happen what happened. It doesn't say that what they did was right. We're not justifying anything that happened. What we're saying is, what do we do now? What would we do after this happened? Well, the thing is, at some point, we're going to need forgiveness. We're going to need to bring that gift to the altar and say, God, we got to work through something here. And he said, wait a minute. You need to work through this first, your horizontal relationships, before you work on your vertical relationship. Now, why would God even care about that? Doesn't that sound funny? God, you kind of got that goofed up. Well, if you're a parent, you can begin to understand. One of my friends, Saturday was his day off, and they had a ritual. He would stay in bed until the kids got up, and they would come bounding down the stairs, and they'd hop on the bed, and they'd fight to see who got to snuggle under Dad's right arm and Dad's left arm. And everybody wanted to get closer to Dad. Well, one day, a couple of the kids came bounding down the stairs, and they jumped on the bed right at the same time at 6:30 in the morning. And guess what? They cracked heads because they both jumped for the same spot on the bed. Well, the older one was a little bigger, and so she took her younger sister and tossed her off. Apparently had been watching wrestling on television or something. Great move, tossed her off the bed, and the one who got tossed off the bed says, "You're a stupid head." And then they started to scramble back to see who could get under Dad's right arm and left arm to snuggle with him. He goes, "Oh, no, 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 no. You stand on the floor and you work this out. We don't push people, and we don't call them stupid head." And he made them apologize and reconcile before they could jump on the bed and get close to him. Now does it make a little bit more sense? That God cares about every single one of us, and he cares as much about the relationship between us because he wants us to be like him. And therefore, that means we have to reconcile with each other and not just him. Now, I know I can say, well, you need to go forgive. And that does as much good as, you're just not going to do that, right? Oh, gosh, after 27 years, I didn't realize that that was the thing standing in my way. But now that you told me that, Pastor Vicki, I'll deal with it. Probably not going to happen, right? Let's talk a little bit about why we don't forgive and see if maybe that won't help us cross over the line. Maybe that will help us understand why it is that we can't seem to get past this part of our past. Well, one of the things that I find is that it sort of gives me a justification for how I treat the other person. You see, if they hurt me, then I'm justified in talking about them behind their back. If they hurt me, then I'm justified in how badly I treat them or how badly somebody else treats them. They're just getting what they deserve, right? And we set ourselves up to be the judge. We set ourselves up to be the one that can decide what the offense was, how long they should suffer because they committed it, and in some case, we just execute the relationship. Judge, jury, and executioner, and we get to decide. We will forgive you when you've suffered enough. We will forgive you when we've decided not to be mad anymore. We will forgive you when we decide it's time. And God says, don't come to me with that kind of attitude. You go fix this before you jump on the bed. Well, let me talk for a minute about the power of unforgiveness. Because I really think that's why we don't forgive, is because we haven't truly come to recognize just how destructive it can be, not only to the person that we don't forgive, and not only to ourselves, but to the people around us as well. I walked into a church that had some serious forgiveness issues, preached on it regularly, because when I walked in the door, they were just a shell of the former congregation. They'd lost more than half of their members. I was brought in and said, well, we kind of got to stabilize this, because if not, we're going to be shutting the doors here pretty soon. And so I began to talk to people to help them work through and begin some healing. And so I would talk to one group, and it was pretty obvious that they were upset with the previous pastor. So I said, well, tell me about it. And they said, well, for the last 2 years, it just seemed like he hasn't been doing anything. He's just been phoning it in. I said, yeah, I could see how you're upset about that. And then I talked to another group, and they liked the pastor, and they said, it just seems like the last 2 years the sparkle had gone out of his eye, and he just didn't seem to put any energy into anything anymore. And I finally, you know me, I can't keep my mouth shut. I finally said, would somebody please explain to me what happened 2 years ago? The folks that liked him said it's been 2 years. The folks that didn't, it's been what happened 2 years ago? And then they began to tell the story how they'd gotten upset at something that he'd done. And they got mad, they felt a little left out and a little got their feelings hurt. And then there was this meeting. And in this meeting, it's called the SPR. You don't need to know that. It's our personnel committee. It's the group that kind of helps the relationship between the church and pastor get worked out well, okay? said we walked into this SPR meeting, and then there was this gal. And this gal, she had more anger and more issues than anybody was going to solve anytime soon. And she became the mouthpiece. She became the one who we set up to unload everything we were upset about. For 2 hours, she unloaded on him. For 2 hours, she brought up everything that he had done wrong, everything he was doing wrong. For 2 hours, she yelled at him. And I said, well, I know SPR meetings, they're not made up of one person. Oh no, we let her because we were mad. We let her because we were mad. He walked out in tears. He ended up leaving pastoral ministry. Is it any wonder? And he went into prison ministry. Now think about that. What he said to them was, if this is what the church of God is like, I would rather minister to murderers and pedophiles than church people. And they thought it was okay to unload on him for 2 hours because they were mad. And I said something to the one woman. I knew she was a good Christian woman. I said, I don't understand how this happens in a church. And she said, well, we thought she went too far, but we were upset. And I'm like, I don't care. Stupid thing's been doing this all day. I don't care how mad you were. Nobody deserves to be screamed at for 2 solid hours that you want to call your pastor. Or anything, for all that matters. But we were mad. But we were mad. And so we just let her go. But we didn't do it ourselves. Oh, well, that makes it all better then. And I says, you do realize that you lost more than half of your congregation because of what happened 2 years ago. Because of the unforgiveness that you harbored and didn't deal with and thought because you were mad, it justified beating somebody up verbally and emotionally. But because it wasn't you. Well, guess what? Is the church the way you want it now? Well, no. Congratulations. Congratulations. This is the result of unforgiveness. This is the result of unforgiveness. Aren't you glad you have me as your pastor? Oh, I was teasing. Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, believe me. Taught on unforgiveness the entire 5 years I was there. 3 or 4 times a year. Working through. This is what harms us. This is not about that person who will never be your pastor again. This is about the harm that's been done to us because of unforgiveness. Because we want to be the judge, the jury, and sometimes the executioner, but we don't understand the consequences. We don't understand the power of unforgiveness. Now, let's switch gears for just a second, because there are some folks here that you were the perpetrator. There were some folks here that you were the one who messed up. You were the one that screwed up, and your relationships are haunting you today because of what you did. What do we do now? What do we do now? Yep, I've come to church, I'm sitting here, I'm even going to throw $5 in my gift into the robot in the back, and then I go, oh, wait a minute. There's some folks that have something against me. Yep, go and be reconciled. Go and be reconciled. Why? Because this is normal. This is a normal part of the Christian life. The person that you're going to have to say I'm sorry to the most is the person you love the most. The person you're going to have to ask forgiveness from the most is the person that you're living with, because that's the normal part of the Christian life. It's the way it works. It's what Jesus taught us. If we want to be healthy and we want to have a great relationship with God, we've got to figure out how to have a great relationship with the people around us. We're going to be doing this frequently. We're going to be doing it frequently. Now, let's talk about that a little bit. How do we do that? Well, let me talk about a couple ways we don't do that. My personal favorite. I'm sorry your feelings got hurt. Do you know what that means? There's a little word right after it. If you listen very carefully, if I say that, which I've used a couple times, I'm sorry your feelings got hurt, you whiny little baby. I'm sorry you got upset. I'm sorry, but, and then we go into the whole litany of why these things happened. Listen, when you screw up, you show up and you say the words, I'm sorry, period. No excuses. No excuses, no explanations. Admit what you've specifically done. Not, I'm sorry your feelings got hurt. I'm sorry you're upset. You admit what you've specifically done or left undone. I'm sorry I let you down. I'm sorry I forgot your birthday. I'm sorry. And then name it specifically. Admit it specifically. No excuses. No explanations. No excuses. And then you have to accept the consequences. You have to accept the consequences. If you stepped out on your marriage, you no longer get to have a password on your phone that your spouse doesn't know. You no longer get to have a password on your computer that your spouse doesn't know. You say, oh, well, that's awful. Yeah, but guess what? You've got to rebuild trust. You've got to accept the consequences for your actions. You've got to do whatever it takes to rebuild that trust. But every time it's after 9 o'clock and I come home late, she's calling me trying to figure, well, you shouldn't have been flirting with your secretary. Right? Accept the consequences in order to rebuild that trust. In order to rebuild trust. Change the behavior. Get a new job if you have to. Quit traveling for work if you have to. Get a new job. Change the behavior. And then ask for forgiveness. Say the words. Say the words. This is not about, oh, it'll be better when she stops being mad. It'll be better when he finally gets over this. Say the words, will you forgive me? Those are powerful words. Will you forgive me? Let's talk a little bit about reconciliation, because usually when we talk about forgiveness, the thing is we have an idea of what it means, and sometimes that's not what it means. You see, reconciliation is not the same thing as forgiveness. Reconciliation says that we're going to come back together in our relationship. And sometimes we can't. Sometimes we have to forgive from a distance. If there's been violence in your relationship, then you need to forgive from a distance. You need to stay safe. You need to make sure that you forgive because of what it does for you and what it does for those around you. But reconciliation may not be able to happen. But there are those times when something's been broken and the Spirit of God comes to heal. And you find that just like a break in a bone, it's stronger where it was broken before instead of weaker. That when it's healed, it's actually stronger because you've been able to reconcile, because you've been able to bring that relationship back together. Now, there are things that are going to stand in the way for you to do this. You're going to be afraid. You're going to have fear. You're going to be afraid to confront the person that you need to reconcile with. And you're going to think you're going to make it worse instead of better, and you're afraid of what might happen, or you just don't like confrontation. But in the midst of it, you got to work through that fear because it's going to haunt you if you don't. Or maybe there's denial. Oh, it wasn't that bad. She's just extra sensitive. Oh, it wasn't that bad. It'll be okay. And it eats at your relationship again, day after day after day. And my personal favorite, pride. Because the pride gets in our way, and we love being right more than we love the relationship. And we don't want to admit we were wrong. You know, God has an antidote. It's called humility. If there's a broken relationship, if there is 1% that was your doing, admit it. Now, I got to tell you, gentlemen, I recommend you do not use the word percent when you're talking. Please forgive me for the 1% that I was wrong. And I'll forgive you for the 99% that you were wrong. I don't recommend that. But if there is 1%, step up to the plate. Admit the part of it that was yours. And ask for forgiveness. You had stones that were given to you. And there are markers in your pew you're going to have to share. I want you to write on this either the name of the person you need to forgive or that you need to ask for forgiveness for. I want you to write on there, even if you have to use code, that's all right. The Bible tells us that those things that need to be forgiven, those things that need to be let go, God sends them as far as the east is from the west. He tosses them, he hurls them, he throws them. Do not throw this at the person you need to forgive. We're going to throw them as far as the east is from the west. We're going to let them go. Why? Because let me tell you about the power of forgiveness. I told you about the power of unforgiveness. Let me tell you about the power of forgiveness. There was a man who wrote a book called The Shack that we've been studying on Monday nights. And he tells a story, and he said, you need to know what's going on behind that book. You see, when I was a little kid, my parents were missionaries in Papua New Guinea. And they introduced me to the tribe, and what they didn't realize was that part of that introduction was being sexually abused by the tribe. From the time I was 4 years old, it was a normal part of my life to have adults do that to me. He said, and then I got older, and they sent me off to boarding school. And I lost everything. I lost my tribe, I lost my family, I didn't understand what was going on. And then that night, the big boys came and ganged up on the little boys. Until I got big enough to be one of the big boys. He said, and I took this and I stuffed it. He said, my anger at my parents for letting something like that happen when they were only 10 feet away. My anger at the system that caused those little kids to be in danger like that. My anger at what I had become because of that. And I stuffed it. And I covered it up with religious language. And I could talk about God as well as anybody else could. And it sounded holy and it sounded right. He said, until the day it all came crashing down. Because I get a phone call from my wife that said, I'm at the office and I know. I'm at the office and I know. Well, what she knew was this. She had found out I'd been having an affair for 3 months with her best friend. By the time I got to the office, she had destroyed it. And she unloaded on me for 4 hours how hurt and angry she was. And after 4 hours, I stopped her and I said, if we're going to do this, I have to come clean. If we're going to do this, I have to tell you every secret I've been keeping from you. And she said, okay. It took him 4 days to come clean with her. Every day, hour after hour after hour, starting when he was 4, all the way till that day, and he came clean. No secrets. No secrets. She wasn't sure she was going to be able to forgive him. She was never going to believe him again. But she did something, quite frankly, I'm not sure I could have done. And she kept him. And she said, I don't want my kids raised without a dad. You can stay in the house, but we're not going to live as husband and wife. And he found a counselor who would help him with his addictions. And he said, this is going to be painful. But if you hold on, God can heal you. As he went through piece by piece rebuilding his broken life, he got to the point where he would come home and tell her all of the things that he was doing and learning and growing, and she would say, I don't care, because I don't believe you. Until finally one of her friends said, you need to give him a place to heal. You need to give him a place to get better. You need to give him some space. And she did. She backed off and she let him heal. It took 11 years to rebuild that relationship. It took 11 years until she could finally say the pain was worth it. It took 11 years until she said, I did the right thing in sticking around, because they were reconciled. Reconciled, brought back together, not just forgiven, but reconciled. That book, The Shack, millions of people have been healed by it. Millions of people have had their relationship with God fundamentally changed because of that book. Millions of people could dare to believe that there is a God who loves them unconditionally, who isn't about the sin list, isn't about making sure we check off the boxes, because they dared to read a book that would never have happened had there not been forgiveness. She paid a very high price for his healing. But because she did, the world can be better. Millions of people better. Now, I don't know whose name's on your rock. I don't know what it stands for. Either somebody you need to ask forgiveness from, or somebody you need to forgive. Or maybe it was an incident that you put something down. I don't know what it is. What I do know is it's extremely powerful when you let it go. It's extremely powerful when you can say, God, as far as the east is from the west. It doesn't mean you justify what they did or what you did. It doesn't mean that you have to be reconciled and everything's going to be hunky-dory when you're done. It does mean you will be free. You will be free. Because you can drop the rock. And you don't have to carry it around anymore. And you can have a better future than you ever thought possible, because of the power of God is now free to work in your life. When you come and you bring your gift to the altar, God, I want you to work in my life. I want you to heal me. I want you to heal my kids. I want you to help them to have a great life. I want to have a great life. Wonderful. There's only one thing standing in the way. This is this rock that you keep carrying around. Just drop it. I'll hurl it as far as the east is from the west. And you'll be free. So this is what I want you to do today. I want you to stand and I want to pray for you. Because some of you have little rocks. And some of you have boulders that you got to forgive. And it's tough because what they did wasn't right. And it hurt. And it still hurts. But today's the day to say, I'm not going to let this destroy my life any longer. as much as I can do about it, I will. And what I want you to do is I want you to come in this way and walk up. Just put it right up here on the altar. I want you to let go and give it to God, and then walk back through, back to your seat on the sides. I'm giving it up to you, God. Here it is.